in Pittsburgh, where Super Bowl should be the expectation, he's not getting the job done anymore. And I think it's time they acknowledge it. Ladies and gentlemen, coming to you from the Spit Studios in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, this is the Spit Sports Show. I want to waste no time today. I want to talk about Patrick Mahomes and his meltdown at the end of the Chiefs-Bills game. And I'm not talking about his play. I'm not talking about the fact that he didn't play well again against the Bills defense that's overrated. But anyways, I'll get into that in another episode. I want to talk about how he reacted after that call, in which Kadarius Toney was clearly lined up about a foot offside. But when someone overreacts to something in life, there's almost always an underlying reason behind it. You know what I mean? So if you were ask your mom for $5 to go to the gas station and get a Slurpee or whatever, and then she starts going on this rant about how you don't do anything around the house, you know, you haven't done the dishes, your room's dirty, you didn't sweep the floor, all of that stuff, you're going to be like, okay, mom, what's really going on here? Like, there's something else. Like, I'm asking you for $5 to, this isn't about my home chores. This is about something else, right? So I have never, ever in my long-legged life seen Patrick Mahomes as mad as he was after that call. Not after the D Ford's offside, which cost him a trip to the Super Bowl against Tom Brady. Not after the many, many calls that have gone against him. Don't get me wrong. He's gotten a lot of calls go for him. Most notably that one in the Super Bowl last year, which people are still mad about. But a lot have gone against him. And I have never seen him react like that. Now, you might be saying, well, that's because it's never happened to him in his entire NFL career, nor in Andy Reid's NFL career. And I get that point. Andy Reid has coached a lot of snaps in the NFL. I think it was like 25,000 something or other. And it's never been called against him. Totally understand that. But listen, like, if you were to watch the play in real time like I did, I said that guy's lined up way offsides, to the point where the ref said after the game he blocked my vision of the ball from the sideline. Like, you can't do that. There's a certain, like, in Pee Wee football and going up from there, like, I get that you check with the refs, but you know what you do before you check with the refs? You look at the ball and make sure you're behind that line, or at least not lined up in the bloody neutral zone. Because he was. Everyone's saying he was like 6 inches off or whatever. It did not look like that. It looked like his heel was where his toe was supposed to be, if you know what I mean. Like, he was offside. And I don't think Mahomes was mad about the fact that they called it. I really don't. But it got to the point where Mahomes was so mad that 3 offensive linemen had to hold him back from giving the ref an earful. Now listen, this wasn't one of those moments where a fake tough guy is with his buds, you know, hold me back, I'm going to do something, when he's actually not going to do anything. He just wants to look tough. Mahomes had a death look in his eye, man. He was going to do something to that ref. I'm not saying he was going to hit him. I'm not saying any of that, because he's a good guy. I know he is. From the bottom of his heart, he's a good guy. Close personal friend. He's not. But he wasn't going to do that, but he was definitely going to give the ref a heck of an earful. And he did that after the game on his press conference. And took poor Josh Allen, who after the game went up to Mahomes for a handshake. All he wanted was, you know, good game. Congrats, see you in the playoffs, hopefully. And Mahomes was like, worst call I've ever seen, to a guy who was sitting on the bench when the call took place. Like, I have never seen Mahomes act this irrationally, ever. And in every single one of his press conferences, he's always been the good company man. You know, I have so much trust in these receivers. I know they put the time in. We're going to get it right. It's just a matter of time, blah, blah, blah. And I totally respect that. But every man has his breaking point. And I think it hit Mahomes. Like, he knows they have to win all of these close games. They're not talented enough anymore to just go on a 6-game win streak and win the AFC. They don't have Tyreek Hill anymore. When that happens, these wins become so much more precious. And when one gets stripped away from you because your receiver made yet another dumb play, boneheaded play, he snapped. And I totally understand that. This wasn't a rage caused by this one call by this ref in this situation. This was a pileup of every single thing these young receivers have been doing all year and haven't improved on. Sky Moore's a whiff. Kadarius Toney has lost them 2 games, you could argue. That one against the Lions where he had, I think, 3 drops, including one that went into a pick 6. And then on Sunday, where if he lined up a foot behind where he was, they'd probably win the game. He is frustrated with these receivers, guys. He is annoyed, and he has every right to be. And he won't throw his receivers under the bus, and I totally respect that. But every man, it gets to the point where you just lose it. He lost yet another game based on his young receivers' boneheaded play. This wasn't just because the ref called it. I think Mahomes knew he was offside. He lost it because he just lost a game to his rival Josh Allen. And you could say all you want, oh, Mahomes is way better than Allen. It's not a rivalry, but it is. Brady was better than Manning. We all knew it. But still, whenever those two guys played, it was Brady versus Manning. And it mattered to both of those guys. Whenever Mahomes and Allen play, it's just that. Mahomes versus Allen, and it matters. And Mahomes lost a game to his rival because of what this young receiver did. And it's been happening all year. They lead the league in drops. They probably have more missed assignments than we can even see on film. And he's been so good with it. To the media, he hasn't blamed anybody. But at this point, he just snapped. This wasn't because of this one call. This was a buildup. And he has every right to be upset. He really, really does. Because what I think is happening with the Chiefs receivers is, and I think this is an underrated part, they lost Eric Bieniemy this year. This is Mahomes' first season without him. And it was well reported that Bieniemy was kind of the bad cop to Reed's good cop. You know what I mean? Reed's not a big yeller. He's kind of just a happy, jolly Santa Claus kind of figure who's really, really smart. But Bieniemy was the guy who would get on these receivers and discipline them and make sure they weren't making these silly little mistakes that they seem to keep making. I think they're missing them. I think he instilled some discipline in that offense that isn't there anymore. And I think Mahomes feels it. And he's getting frustrated because of it. And I totally understand that this has never been called against them before, but gosh, it was so obvious. Like I said before the ball snapped, that guy's offsides. I wonder if they're going to call it. They called it. Should they have? That's a debate for another day. But this isn't Mahomes reacting to one call. Like if you saw how irate he was both right after the call and even after a couple minutes had passed after the game when he shook Josh Allen's hand, he's frustrated with this team. He knows they're not where they should be at this point in the season if they want to make a Super Bowl. They have so long to go if they want to beat those Ravens or just any of these big teams in the NFC, the Eagles who they might have to play in the Super Bowl, the Niners. Like they're just not on that level right now because they don't have the discipline. And I think Mahomes can feel it. He snapped. And I totally understand why. And speaking of snapping, trust me, this will make sense in a second. I want to pivot over to the Steelers and Mike Tomlin. So, you know, you're saying the Steelers, what? Like, they played on Thursday. This is old news. Well, they did play on Thursday. But I have a take about the Steelers that I've had for a long time that I haven't really been able to say because I haven't found the right time to do it. But I do now. Steelers lost to the Patriots on Thursday. And to say the Patriots are a bad team would be an ultimate understatement. One of their best players is talking to Saquon Barkley after they lost to the Giants saying, "You're lucky we're bum this year." He used a different word, but you know what I mean. Their team knows how bad they are. They have the worst weapons in football. They have a quarterback who was the backup to a quarterback who probably won't get another starting job for the rest of his life. Their defense, while hot right now, is not very talented. And the Steelers found a way to lose to them. I want to talk about Mike Tomlin and his role in this. So since Antonio Brown left, got cut, said kumbaya, whatever, the Steelers have been one of the most boring and consistently uninteresting teams in the NFL. That's just a fact. Like as soon as AB left, Big Ben was kind of out of his prime. They had a few years of him where his shoulder was just completely shot. Like, do you know that uncle who plays floating quarterback for you and your family on Thanksgiving? Like he started off really good, but eventually, his age caught up with him and you don't want to replace him because it's kind of a tradition for him to play quarterback. But like at the same time, you're like, can you let someone else play? But anyways, Ben was a disaster. They transitioned to Mason Rudolph for a year And you might be asking, who is Mason Rudolph? Well, that just proves my point, doesn't it? He wasn't very good. He was most known for getting hit by a helmet with Myles Garrett being involved, that whole play. He was the quarterback for that. And then they draft Kenny Pickett out of Pittsburgh for the Pittsburgh Steelers. It was all supposed to be this storybook ending, start, beginning, whatever. But he's not the guy. And everyone can see it. Everyone knows he doesn't have the talent, but they're probably going to stick with him because he's consistent enough. And that kind of gets to what I'm talking about with Tomlin. So Mike Tomlin has never had a losing record in his NFL career, which seems impressive, and it is. Not having a losing record in the NFL where wins are so hard to come by is damn impressive, and I have so much respect to him for being able to do that. However, he is the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is a cornerstone NFL franchise, in my opinion. The four cornerstones of the NFL are the Steelers, the Packers, the Giants, and the Cowboys, in my opinion. Those are the four. If you want to disagree with that, debate a wall. But for me, that's my four. When you're the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, in my opinion, there should be higher expectations than just above average every single year. And that's all he's been doing since Antonio Brown left and that offense completely dissipated. So since Antonio Brown left in 2019, they went 8-8. They went 12-4 the next year. In a year, they started 9-0. And yet everybody still thought they were complete frauds. No one predicted that they would do well in the playoffs, even win a playoff game, and they turned out to be right. In those playoffs, they got demolished by the Chiefs. They got to 9-0 off some fluky finishes and some wild calls. I don't know if you remember that season, but that's how they did it. They got smoked in the playoffs. They went 9-7, they went 9-8, and right now they're 7-6. That is 5 years of boring mediocrity. I totally understand that the goal is to win games, and you want to win as many of them as you can. But I go back to this a lot. The NFL and the NFL teams within it are an entertainment product. The owners make money off of the entertainment of it, off of the television ratings, off of the stadium tickets, off of the food you buy, all of that stuff. I don't think the Rooney family, who owns the Steelers, appreciates being consistently boring. And that's what they have been. And they have no playoff wins to show for it in the last 5-6 years. None. It's not like they're just this team that keeps grinding you down and eventually reigns victorious. They're just not. They haven't been good. They've been just above average. They haven't won a playoff game. They've missed the playoffs 3 of those years. They haven't been that good. And I think it has to go back to the head coach, who is the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, I'll remind you. Super Bowls should be their expectations, not barely squeaking into the playoffs and getting demolished in the first round. Now, how much does Tomlin have to do with that? I don't know. But all I do know is different coaches in this same situation have been tossed before. Jim Caldwell, don't forget, was the head coach for Detroit. He went 9-8 back-to-back years, and he got booted. And that's Detroit. Like, I'm a fan of the Lions, don't get me wrong, but they're not the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think the Steelers' ownership is loyal to a fault. And to a certain point, I respect that. But from another lens, how many more of these 9-8 years are you going to take? Because they have no Super Bowl in their future as far as I can see. They're sure as heck not winning one with Pickett. And they're never going to have a good enough draft pick to draft one of these blue chip quarterbacks who could compete with a Mahomes or a Burrow or an Allen or one of these superstars in the playoffs, because they're always going to be just above average. They're always going to be drafting like 17. So they're going to get a guy like Kenny Pickett at quarterback instead of a guy like Caleb Williams. And those are two vastly different football players. Look, I'm a fan of Mike Tomlin. If there was one coach in the NFL I'd want to play for, it'd be Dan Campbell first, Mike Tomlin second. And I think he'll get a job somewhere else instantly if he gets fired. And I think he'd be a great fit somewhere like, not Tennessee specifically, because Vrabel's doing such a great job, but somewhere that kind of culture, you know, like a Jacksonville or trying to think of a Cleveland, something like that. But in Pittsburgh, where Super Bowl should be the expectation, he's not getting the job done anymore. And I think it's time they acknowledge it. The Cleveland Browns have had a better 6-year run than the Pittsburgh Steelers have. They have a playoff win. They have a 12-win season, better than the Steelers, I'll tell you that. And I think it's time for the Steelers to recognize that and potentially move on from a very beloved coach. But if the productivity isn't there, you got to go. Like, that's just kind of how it is in life, isn't it? Anyways, thank you all so much, as always, for listening to the Spit Sports Show. I want to know, What do you guys think about my Mike Tomlin take? Am I crazy? Do you guys think the Chiefs have a legitimate chance of making the Super Bowl this year? Please let me know in the comments below. As always, thank you all so much for listening and watching. I appreciate it more than you can know, and I will see you in the next episode. Peace out.